Hey everyone, this is the business of TTRPG publishing. Thank you all for being here, especially on a Sunday so early in the morning. I said what I said. Yeah, all right, I'm going to hit the start button. My name is Sean Banerjee. I'll be your moderator today. I'm the CEO of the Word Refinery. We're a TTRPG publishing company that focuses on lifting underrepresented voices in the industry. Currently, we are on Kickstarter with our first big book, which is Koboa, a South American setting by a fully South American creative team. It's excellent. It's KOBOA, and we're like 400% funded, but we'll still take your money. I mean, yeah, it's like 401%. Doesn't matter. Why don't we start with introductions at the far end?
All right, cool. Hey, everybody. I am Dot. I'm the marketing director for Koboa Press, your friendly neighborhood, a third-party publisher.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. When I'm not doing that, I do freelance writing. I've written for companies like Modiphius. I just did world design on their new Fallout book. And a little dabbling of producer stuff on the side. I have a podcast network, and when I have the time, I do a little bit of tabletop actual play production.
Hey, I'm Devin.
And I'm Dustin.
And we run Elder Eye Entertainment. We are a production company that works with these.
Yep, that works with publishers. Works hand in hand with the publishers to help showcase and bring content from the publications that are printed
to viewers so that they will enjoy your content and buy your content. We'll give you that kind of insight on what you can do to work with people like us. But as far as the publishing part, that's not really what we're here for. But hey.
Support background.
I was about to say, you're here to tell us why you love publishers.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyways, I'm Jenny Loveday. I'm the lead editor at Steamforge Games and also the director for Tabletop RPGs here. And I do a lot of other stuff as well. Much like Dot, I freelance for a bunch of companies, Wizards of the Coast, Renegade Games, literally everyone else that I just forgot the name of. So
Those are all the companies. That's all of them.
I have favorites too, but I can never think of those. Yeah, the support side of publishing is equally important because, but anyways, who are you?
Hey everybody, I'm Brian Poland. I'm the VP of RPG Development at Infinite Black. In my world in publishing, I do everything from art to design layout to design development to production, actually interacting with printers both in the US and overseas. So I kind of juggle a little bit of everything, and the game I'm pushing hard the most right now is Vast Grim, as I'm constantly wearing.
He has items available for sale if you wish to purchase.
We had to tear it down before this panel.
Oh, no.
But you can get them.
I didn't say physically.
Buy his hat.
Come to my van.
Buy his
Come to my
hat.
van.
Buy this literal hat. Do it. $40.
He's going to set up in the weird way that's kind of like around the corner in the back bowels. No.
All right.
Anyways.
So this panel works best when we're really focused on the information that y'all are looking for. Before we get into that, I'll ask one question of our panelists, which is if you had one cannot miss tip for someone trying to get into RPG publishing, what would it be? And I'll give mine first because it's don't.
All right. No, I would say.
Well, he took mine.
If you could do anything else that makes you happy, go do that instead.
You don't have to put your stuff on Kickstarter. It is not the only way to fund and pay for your publishing.
Nice.
Make sure when you're doing your budget, you budget to pay yourself.
Oh, smart. Good
What are you
tip.
talking about?
What?
Sean.
What was that? What was that one? What's
Yes, you have to pay yourself.
That's a common pitfall that leads to burnout very quickly, is forgetting to pay yourself because you're worried the project won't fund and you set the budget too low, and then you realize you paid money to make this product.
And this is what we like to call crossover between publishing and producing.
Yeah.
100%.
And I would say go to as many conventions as you can, network, meet people, make friends in the industry, because you never know who you'll end up partnering with to help you on your way, and you can learn so much from those people.
And if you're an introvert, just go to a convention and find your extrovert to adopt you, and then do that.
Yeah. I'll send around.
It's a very small industry, and everybody knows everybody, and so the more you get out there, the more you show your face and prove that you know. adamant and want to do this, like we talk and it'd be like, oh, did you remember that one small indie publisher that we just saw that had this amazing book that came out? Everybody needs to play it, and so no matter what, how big or small your publication is, getting out there and showing it is the most important.
Being constantly in the way is a good way to get noticed.
And the people that really seem to make it are the people that don't give up. Because there's so
That's
many
right.
people that can do this, but just keep going and don't stop.
Yeah, I think,
Which is the opposite of what Sean started.
yeah, I would say, you know, people forget that, like, when you are told no, it's just one no, right? And no is not necessarily a bad word. No can mean no, not right now, or no, this isn't the right fit for us. But, like, no is a word that, as a creator, you have to learn to accept. It's got to become part of your process, not a roadblock in your process. So if one person says no, it doesn't mean the next one will, or the one after that. You can't give up.
Accepting rejection as a normalcy, but not as the only answer.
Yes.
It's kind of like that old saying of a master fails more times than you've attempted. It's just the same idea.
You're going to make garbage.
Be persistent, but don't be annoying, because people will also know that.
I think when we talk about business too, what we're talking about at conventions is actually networking. And our concept of networking is entirely screwed up by what we see networking is supposed to be. Like, it's supposed to look like handshakes and passing out business cards. And like, I've networked with you. Networking is actually about a mutual exchange between two people that will get something equal out of it. That is networking. So if all you're doing is walking around and passing out a card to people, that's not networking, because you're not offering them anything, and thus you're not even having the conversation to see what they can offer you. Networking is about a conversation and an equal exchange. So find good practices in your networking. Know how to talk about yourself, about your product, and know the person that or the company or the individual that you're going to. Make sure you're not pitching your like grimdark rated R setting to somebody that does family friendly RPGs. Know your market, know what you make, and then go find the right people to pitch your stuff to. That's just super important as you bump into people at cons and really know what you're trying to do with networking.
Also care about their content as well, because if you're only pitching yourself, it sounds like someone going, me, remember me, and I think it cool, you're doing something cool, but me and my thing. If you are genuinely excited about their project and they become excited about your project, it becomes more of a
Mutual
Yep,
beneficial
equal
thing.
exchange.
Exactly.
Yeah, equal exchange.
Full circle, there we are.
Yeah. Woo.
Also, I hate talking about ourselves sometimes, but it's easier to talk about other people's stuff and focus on the top of our ours so we don't have to.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. I mean, word of mouth marketing is best marketing.
Yep. All right, we are not great at counting to one, so
No, I
back to
got
you.
it. That was
I think we answered
one
your
tip.
question,
One
right?
tip for each. One tip each, right? Everybody feels we did that correctly. Great. So let's throw it to y'all. Does anybody have any questions? Or should we just keep rambling for 50 more minutes?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Hey, all right, there we go.
Sold.
What do you got?
I forgot to bring the handouts.
Thank you, by the way, just first off the bat for all of those notes for getting started. For someone who has never published, never written a TTRPG before, do y'all have any recommendation from your experience, some guidance as to the process from creation to dissemination?
Yes. I work in absolutely, yes, every day. I think the most important thing is you have to decide, are you making a new system or are you building on somebody else's? That is step number one as a publisher in TTRPG. Because that's going to decide, are you building a third party or secondary content off of somebody else's base core system or base core rules or IP? Or are you starting from ground up, right? Are you making your own system and it's going to be the next great unique thing for tabletop? Because those are very different processes. If you're going from ground up, you're looking at a lot longer playtest process. You're looking at a much harder sales pitch, especially when you're in a market where everybody is dedicated, to the 3 symbol brand. And you're going to have a lot more writing and research time if you're building from ground up, because you're trying to create something unique. So you've got to go look at what everybody else has put out there and be really well versed in what's already in the industry to create something that holds a unique place. You're building off somebody else's content. Now you're actually jumping into licenses, legalese. What are you making? How are you building out from it? And what lines do you skirt to actually do it? And then you begin the process of I write, I edit, I play test, I write, and then out.
And on that license, sorry, go ahead. And on that third-party license side as well, no matter what no matter what system you're doing, you can use whatever structure they have to kind of give you the idea of the beats of the product that you're creating.
Yep.
Because you can kind of emulate that and at least give yourself a foundation for where to start.
I want to assume that you're starting from the process of you've already written the thing, because otherwise the first step is start writing. And then keep writing, and it's going to be trash, and then rewrite it, and then hire an editor, write it, rewrite it again, loathe it a bit, and then eventually you'll have something that you're willing to publish.
Some other things to think about if you are doing it yourself. You can start small. There's things like DM's Guild and Drive-Thru-RPG. You obviously don't want to release your whole content if you're looking to sell it later. But those are small selling things that are kind of, you're working with those websites that do take a part of the funds. But if you're doing the third-party thing, get an editor that understands that format. Like if you're doing, Call of Cthulhu, D&D, Pathfinder, any of like that, there's a layout that kind of is the formula for those brands. And if you don't fit within that formula and somebody looks at your content, they're instantly going to be like, this doesn't look, just visually, it doesn't look like it melds with the system that I want, and it feels like I have to learn something new, even if it's not. Even if it is very straightforward, if it visually does not look like it is cohesive, your audience is automatically going to make that decision for you.
And I'm going to tell you this, that actually is true as well backwards for if you are creating something from the ground up. When you go to create a brand new system, part of your development process is not just what you're writing on the page, it is now the design layout of your monster stat blocks, of how your player character sheets look, right? That then is supposed to be available potentially for others to build off of. So you not only have to create the content, initial process includes a guide for continuing to build off whatever game that you're creating. You have to have those templates of those things. So
You definitely need a style guide.
a style guide.
Yep.
Thank you. Those are the words I was looking for, Jenny.
If you don't have a style guide and templates and you're hiring people to do your work, you
Yep.
do it yourself.
Yep.
And you're creating a lot of extra work.
But a lot of our
And you're going to lose a lot, you're going to spend a lot of money
a
fixing
lot of
it.
money, yeah, to create from ground up. But there are style guides for every major TTRPG publisher we know, right? Wizards has one, Cobalt Press has one. I'm sure Chaosium has one. Like there are template guides if you were writing for their stuff, and they suggest you use them because it makes it look like it matches the product.
The other thing is, as I said, is play testing, things like that. Working with your local conventions and running games. We have a couple of friends that do that at conventions as they're play testing. You get direct feedback. And be open to that feedback because it's going to be honest, because that's the audience you're pitching to. If they have cool ideas, incorporate it, but also get their names so you can put them in the list of play testers and things like that. Please credit everybody that helps you create your product.
A minute ago, you had mentioned Drive-Thru-RPG and DM's Guild. I would also want to make sure that people know there's also Itch out there, because a lot of the smaller indie RPGs tend to lean towards that, because a lot of the audience is very different from the folks that download stuff on Drive-Thru-RPG and Itch, and you want to make sure you hit everybody. You want everybody that is interested in playing your game to have the opportunity to.
Yeah.
Do you feel like we've answered your question?
Pretty darn well.
Okay, great, wonderful.
You're welcome.
Yeah, any questions you have as broad or as low-level entry into this idea, please.
What is words?
How do I?
Yeah.
What is word?
All right.
Speaking of words.
Do we have another question?
Sorry.
Yeah, there we go. Back.
Advice or how to protect your creative content.
Oh.
Oh, that's
oh,
a
God.
very interesting question that I'm sure no one here has opinions about.
We haven't thought about any sort of licensing this year. Why would you think
Yeah,
that?
I haven't had
yeah.
to think about licensing in
That's it.
days.
I had a video game panel on Thursday, and I was asked that question from an indie developer, so I figured,
Yeah,
TTRPG.
it's
Yeah.
important, right? You're publishing, you're putting out words, you're putting out content that belongs to you, therefore you want to protect that, so it's not stolen. We live in a horrible day and age where people will just steal your stuff. And there are legal steps that you take to protect your work. The way that, say, the SRD works, or a lot of what we consider base licenses or systems, is that we put out something that's open. The SRD that was just released into Creative Commons is now open. We can all build on it. Now, it is skin and bones, right? There's not even monster descriptions in it, right? But it says, here's the stat block for the beholder, go use it. Anything else that you say put into the adventure that you drop the beholder into as your encounter is your IP. Unless, of course, it is a part of the SRD that you're using. That's the IP you have to protect. So with Cobalt Press, we're in the middle of Tales of the Valiant. I'm sure y'all have heard. We have two things that were part of the larger project Black Flag. We had the core fantasy rules, right? The core fantasy roleplay rules. That is the open, irrevocable system that we are putting out under a license that says you can use it forever and always. Things like the Tales of the Valiant logo, our new character art for the monsters. Those are the things that belong to KPIP, and you have to have a special contract with us to be able to use that in your stuff, not necessarily for the core system. So think of it like the bones of a skeleton versus the actual meat of it.
You also cannot trademark mechanics.
Correct, you cannot trademark mechanics. That's important. You can't be
They're
like,
human
oh,
beings and they like working on cars and you can't trademark them.
right. Yeah, so it's like you can't trademark roll a D6. We've been rolling D6s with Yahtzee for decades before there was tabletop roleplay. Like you can't be like, drawing a card is a mechanic I copyright. You
I
can't.
know that.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't.
I shall card draw king.
So the important thing is that you know that the moment you put original IP down, whether you file or not, it belongs to you.
And IP stands for intellectual property.
Intellectual,
for
thank
those
you.
who don't know.
It is immediately, technically considered yours. You made it. If it, say, goes to somebody else or somebody gets eyeballs on it and they go to make something, you then have to decide what steps have you taken to protect to say, no, this was mine first. I did this first originally. Which is then the step you take, because fair use says the moment you write it, it's yours. You can take a step to copyright it, create an original logo, you're going to want to trademark it. Okay? Trademark's a tricky thing. Because the moment you
Yes,
file,
it is.
the moment you file for trademark, the whole world knows it. Which means, for example, the reason we did not throw the trademark in for Tales of the Valiant, going from Project Black Flag to Tales of the Valiant branded, is because we didn't want it to leak to press first. Because press can go just search it and see our copyright or our trademark claim immediately, and then they leak it before we're ready to. So we filed the trademark less than 24 hours before we announced to the public, just to be able to get it so that we maintain first marketing for that. So there's a lot of tricky stuff that begins to happen when you start talking about what belongs to me, how do I protect myself. Get a lawyer. If you're going beyond simple couple things here, couple things there to drive your RPG, you're really wanting to step into publishing, you need to get yourself some legal help.
I can,
Specifically an IP lawyer.
Specifically an IP lawyer.
and I can firsthand say, Rocket Lawyer, not enough. Not enough.
Not enough.
LegalZoom, also not enough.
I will also say there's something that you kind of touched on, but an idea is not,
You can't copyright an idea.
that.
Trademark.
So before you have anything written, be careful who you tell your idea to.
Oh my God, yes.
So yeah, once it's written, it's your IP. But if you're like, oh, I have this really cool idea or this really cool mechanic, and obviously you're talking to somebody else, and they go, oh, that is really cool, and they write it first. Legally, they have the
Yeah,
IP
they got
rights.
it. They got it. Yeah, there's something you can do about it. I'll give you a little tip for those of you that are terrified of the idea of having to hire an IP lawyer. Most states have a pro bono organization that works with creatives for free. It is funded usually by each state out of arts budgeting. We have one here. It's called Georgia Lawyers for the Arts right here in Atlanta. Creatives get 1 hour of free pro bono work with a actual lawyer who's looking for a tax write-off for his company, as he's doing pro bono work, to come and help you look through your LLC documentation, your IP needs, and they partner you with the right lawyer who's looking for an hour of pro bono work. And you get it for free. And then if you like it, they can continue to pair you off. But when I filed for my personal LLC, that's the first thing I did. I was like, I'm just going to take an hour and make sure I did this right. Pass it off to a lawyer, he checked it off, and then I filed. But you get a free hour for free. And there are a lot of organizations and businesses that work with freelancers and creatives to provide this kind of protection at a low dollar cost before you go and like pay for a massive hourly rate for an IP lawyer. There's probably an IP lawyer out there that might do the pro bono work for you if you know which and how to find it.
I'm going to ask a question of the audience. How many of you are interested in getting into being a publisher? And how many of you here are interested in, well, let's start with that one.
Publishers.
Publishers.
You want to publish a thing.
Dope.
Yeah, you want to
Anything.
Like at any level, like even if it's just a vague interest at this point.
Okay.
How many of you here are interested in becoming freelancers that say work for publishers? And
Okay.
You can answer for both. That's fine.
Okay.
Cool.
Interesting. That's important.
Because I want
One
to.
option is having someone else do a lot of the heavy lifting while you just do the creative bit. And the other option is a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to think about that, right? Like if you're really just interested in writing, is there a reason why you can't begin to seek out freelancing jobs to fulfill that creative need? Now, if you've got the burning desire to become a publisher, that's a whole different. Yeah, that's a whole different pill
It goes back
to
to
swallow.
I'm supposed to be
First
so
answer, number one, no.
You're looking to get in.
Yes, and that's okay. Take your
Yeah.
vision, make it happen. Just know that as you become if you're self-publishing, that is a very big, hard step because you're now talking about hiring artists, writers, layout people, editors. We got to have our editors, right?
You have to have an editor. You cannot
Got
edit
to.
your own words.
Thank you. Don't edit, and don't have a friend to edit your own words either. Like get somebody that's going to give you the hard knock opinion.
Non-biased.
Spend more money on
Third-party.
it. It's worth it.
Get somebody who
You can
understands.
show it to your mom, she'll pick it apart probably.
Hey, there you go. Let mom do it.
Get somebody who understands maintaining voice throughout a text. Most of what we're writing is in one way or another narrative, right? If it's an adventure, if it's a setting. And there are lots of great editors out there that'll make everything sound identical, and that's not always what you want. Every writer has their own voice. Every writer needs to break certain rules in order to maintain that. So it takes a little bit of time for your editors and your designers to like gel together, but make sure commas are far less important than maintaining voice.
Sean.
I'm not saying commas aren't important, but they're less important.
Yeah.
Commas are probably the thing I have the most complaints about in my day-to-day job, and how everyone that turns work into me abuses them, so, including
I thought your
Sean.
thing was apostrophes.
You do not pluralize using apostrophes.
That's actually true. That
Any
is actually
sign that you
grammatically-
print, please don't put an apostrophe on it, it probably doesn't belong there. I have seen several signs that were pluralized using apostrophes.
Do a fight.
So good.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? Okay.
No, we got some more coming through.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
So, in this, going back to the topic of like, working for a publisher,
Yeah.
what would you guys say is like the one thing publishers are looking for in a freelancer? Like, how would you build a resume, and what's the one thing you're always looking for in a freelancer, from hours to just what
Communication.
they're capable of?
That if you don't answer an email, we're not getting back to you. Like if you send us something and you can't communicate back with us about your skills, about your needs, about a contract, you have to have some. You don't even have to verbal, written communication skill. Absolutely. On a resume, here is what I'll say about that.
It's a mixed bag.
It is a mixed bag. Cobalt Press has hired designers to become freelancers for us after they were fantasy writers. They didn't write tabletop, right? Or we've had people that were backer submission designs into a monster book who were so good and so inspired and so wonderful and worked so great with our team that we hired them on the spot, and now they are helping us write Tales of Valor. So it's hard for me to say, like, this is what your resume should look like, or these are the points you should hit on it. A resume is meant to show the best of you.
Resumes are anxiety-inducing.
They are, and the reason is because we're always trying to build a resume to look like something we think it should look like. When a resume is really meant to be your billboard.
Okay. this isn't our side, but I'll have a question that elaborates
allow
on
it.
that.
Oh, goodness.
This
I'll
time.
allow it.
One exception.
But in the sense of like, what if you're just getting into it? Should you have a sample of your writing work and things like that? Obviously, if you don't have a list of, I worked on this, even if it is pulling from stuff, you should just have a sample of your writing
So
style.
it is actually, unless the company asks for a sample, which is technically illegal, a sample of your work submitted as a writing resume is actually illegal because it puts everybody at risk. If we saw your work that you haven't published, or maybe you have, and then we, 3 years down the line, accidentally publish something similar, you could sue us because we stole your work. So we don't accept writing samples.
No.
We accept listings of your work. Yeah, we cannot, and if you send me a writing sample, we immediately take your resume and your writing sample and get rid of it, because it is high risk for our company. What we want to see is a history, a listing history of what you're working on. It doesn't have to include, like I've worked for Modifius and I've worked for Wizards of the, it doesn't have to be huge. What we want to see is a successful history of hard work, dedication to actually publishing it, so no dead projects. Right? If we, especially for somebody like Cobalt Press, we have a history of successful Kickstarters. If you have a bad Kickstarter in your past, we will find it and we will not hire you. Right? Like, we don't want to hire somebody that didn't even come through on their own project. How can we assure they're going to come through on ours? And then you want to talk a little bit about, like, if you have worked on other successful projects, talk about your best, not all of them, your best ones on your resume. Right? The things you are most proud of. The second most important thing, and I can hear Thomas, our editorial director, right now telling me this in my ear. You need to know what kind of what you do best in tabletop writing. Is it monster stat blocks? Is it world building? Right? Is it narrative design? Is it adventure design? Because we're not going to hire you for the whole book. We're going to hire you to write monsters. We're going to hire you to write magic items. We're going to hire you to do this piece of the adventure. So if we're looking for an adventure writer, but you're really good at, character design, that's not right for us. It's just not. So you need to know what you're best at. So yeah.
From the perspective of a smaller publisher, I look for people that are highly motivated, that are putting their own stuff out there, that are going and being active within the community that they're a part of, and that they're seeing that they're consistent with it. Because I will I'll quickly grab somebody and be like, hey, I see you're putting these adventures out. We've got something, we need an adventure, and will you write something for it? Because I'm seeing that they're doing it and they've got the motivation to do it. Because in the smaller press scene, you need those people. We're all entrepreneurs, and we need the people that are like-minded that are going to stick with it.
I would say from working with, as a freelancer, 99.9% of the time you're going to be hired as a work for hire. And what that means is whatever you are creating is not yours. It's not for you. It is for the publisher or the company that you are working for. So you have to let that go. You have to be able to understand that what you're creating has a set parameters that you're going to be working under and with, whether art director, editorial, what have it, that you must stay in. Where it's like, okay, I'm making magic items. They may have a set list, and
Yep. We may already have art description for you and say, write around this.
Yep. And so you just need to be able to let go of things.
Of the ownership. If you want to self-publish, that's your ownership space. If you're coming to work for a company, we're asking you to write for us. So a work for hire contract, like he's talking about, super duper important, because that's going to be what you see the most if you're working for even small companies, probably as a work for hire.
Yep, they're shifting a little bit in that space.
Are they? Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah.
For us, we still do work for hire most of the time.
Yep.
And usually it's based on word count. We need 1,200 words for world design. The work that I've done for Modifius, that's exactly how they set it up. They're like, we're going to pay you up to, X cents per word for this many words, due by this date. And then I hand it off after I've written it. That is it. That is my entire process in...
Oftentimes, the next time you see it is when it's published.
When it goes to print.
Yeah.
Yeah. It took them for the Fallout, I just finished writing for them for the Fallout RPG game. We started in middle of 2020 and it just released. I finished my writing at the end of 2020 and it took them almost 2 additional years before I saw the completed piece of it.
Yeah, the life cycle for, if any of you are interested in being editing freelancers, which I know some of us do as well, is a little shorter, but yeah, the things that I edited last year are coming out later this year, some stuff from the
That's a quick
Renegade.
turnaround.
Yeah, that is quick
Yeah.
turnaround.
We have a friend that told us an idea, and it just got announced that it's finally coming out, and he pitched this idea to us 5 years ago.
Yep.
5 years, so don't think it's going to be a quick turnaround. It can take as long as it needs to take to put out the content that you are happy with, and this is his own self-published thing. Go check out Ragnarok, made by Ivan Van Norman. Super fucking awesome.
Small time guy.
Small time guy, but yeah, he pitched that idea to us like 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Speaking of 5 years, this is totally different. But once you put, like, if you're self-publishing or you're doing your own thing, if you put out a product, stick with it for 5 years minimum. Like, make sure if you put out a game, keep supporting it for at least 5 years to come. Because if you crowdfund it, that's only the beginning.
Yes.
And there's so many more people that will learn about your game afterwards. But if you just make it one and done, it's not supported, and people aren't going to support it.
That's not how the internet algorithm works for sales, y'all. For as your marketing director, that's not how it works. It can't be a one and done if you want longevity. It just doesn't work that way. So what you want to do is create the thing, and like you said, put it out there in all the places. Maybe you're selling it on your website, maybe you put it on drive-through, maybe you're running a sale on the Roll20 VTT because you got it up there, cool. You get it in all the places, and then you let it be. You don't ignore it in terms of marketing, but you have to recognize that maybe the next thing that you write in a year is built off of the thing you just wrote. And now the algorithm says, well, it pings both of those in my key phrasing, so both of them pop back up at the top of drive-through RPG. And that's how you build a library on something like drive-through that becomes sustainable. You have to create a lot and stick with a thing. For a period of time. 5 years seems like a good number. I didn't know that, thank you. And really weed it out. And then what you'll probably see is that growth and then the plateau. And a lot of people think the plateau is bad. The plateau is not bad when it comes to sales. Plateau means sustainability.
Yep.
It means regular customers. And this is actually not healthy business model because at some point this goes. What I actually want to see is up and a little,
Steps.
a step, right? The step model is actually a healthy look at how you raise money in business and how you do it. And you do that by diversifying your income streams. So not just drive-through, it's also got to go on my website. I've also got to get it over here on Roll20 or on Shard or wherever I'm going to publish it. Alchemy.
We're both partnered with Alchemy.
I'm sorry. There's just so many other notes in my tongue. Alchemy and BTT, wherever you're going to publish it and get it out there, diversify your streams. Be out there networking. Do all the mini pieces that are required and leave it for a period of time, and you'll see sustainability, which is really, hopefully, what you want.
And as you grow those,
A long time.
and as you grow your product line and your SKUs, then you can try and approach distributors and try and get out into more stores, because getting your product into retail stores is one of the major hurdles.
Yes.
And getting it in front of many retail stores is even bigger. And once you have that, then your audience really starts to grow.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back to the beginning of this question about like what do you do? We didn't really address like what do you do if you don't have anything to put
On your resume?
And I'd like to
Start writing.
kind of go through. Well, yeah, start writing one, but how I got started. Obviously, I didn't just have a back catalog of writing that I was willing to show the world. Fan fiction is not a thing that
I got started editing fan fiction.
yeah,
Wild.
well, actually that first because I was annoyed by how bad some of it was. Hi. But anyways, no, I was helping with like organizing things, as the that makes sense there, and I had demonstrated competency, consistency, and a willingness to do the thing that I said I was going to do. So then they were like, "Oh, you can write too," and I'm like, "Yeah, these skills are definitely transferable." So if you don't have anything, it's back to getting involved in the community, getting to know people, and demonstrating that you're not just going to bounce. And it's true that you have ideas and you want to get started somewhere.
Blogs are a really easy, great way. I mean, Cobalt Press started on LiveJournal.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Cobalt Press was started in a tip jar on LiveJournal. That was a long time ago. We're on our way to $1 million Kickstarter. So let me put that in like a perspective for you. Wolfgang Bauer has always believed that a blog is super important. That's why we put a lot of effort into Cobalt Press's blog, and it's why you get a lot of free content on our blog. You might get a mini adventure. You might get a new monster stat blog, right? Put out a blog. Blog is a great way to hold you accountable to yourself to be writing and to put out small things. So on this resume where maybe you don't have a lot of history, what you can say is, I've got a blog, check out my writing.
And see that I wrote consistently.
For a year.
See that I wrote 90 articles in a weekend and then timed their release.
But yeah, so like
They were consistently released.
Consistency is huge. Like if I go to your blog and I see 6 months between the last post, that's not consistency, right?
Don't go to my blog.
Unless of course you're putting out big things every 6 months. Like you're telling me you're putting out, you know, a 30-page packet. Okay, 6 months makes sense. You got a lot of work to do in there, right? Or a 60-page packet. But if you're just doing like one-pagers that are going up, set a regular thing. It's like, I can definitely do this every 2 weeks. And then if I go back and see for a year, every 2 weeks you posted a blog, you are reliable, consistent, clearly scheduled in on time, and I can actually driven, and I can get a good idea of your writing, right? Or because I'm going to pass you off to my editorial director. They're going to come through with my email. I'm going to go, oh, this is great. Thomas, go check it out.
And how often is it reasonable to think you can consistently publish a one-pager?
Are you looking at me?
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
I do one a week. So
Okay.
That's kind of what they do.
That's amazing.
I'm like,
what are the struggles with something like that? Trying to write once a
I'm
month.
bringing you onto this
Yeah, I'm
panel.
sorry, you have to tell us now.
Well,
You walk in the room.
there is definitely a portion of it where you have to sort of release control. We bring a guest on to help come up with the idea, and then we write and draw.
Okay.
Hey, introduce yourself to the room.
Hi, I'm Andrew Tiger Wizard from Epic Levels. Hi, everybody.
Guys,
Where can they find your one pages?
On our website, Epic Levels Rap Gods.
epiclevelsrapgods.com.
Go listen to the podcast, hear all the episodes.
Oh, yeah. And
Very cool.
I did a really weird one with them. It was.
We all do really weird
They're
ones
all.
with them.
They're all. If you like weird things.
I've never done anything.
This is another thing, just as a writer in general, not for this. You're going to hate your own work, especially starting out.
Yes.
But being like accountable for yourself and still put it out there, because that is going to build the things that publishing companies are looking for, which is constantly being posting and things like that, and being accountable and driven and all that type of things. You'll also learn the more you put out there. The better you'll get. If you keep not pushing yourself to do that, you won't get better, because practice is what gets you to be a better writer.
And the larger pool of material you have, the easier it is to forget about the absolute trash you published at the beginning.
Yeah.
Raise your eye pressure.
You know what? I'd say maybe at that 5-year point, it's time for a good colon. Right?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I'm not going to look further than 5 years back.
A good call.
Like, I will stop
Publish my
scrolling in
first
your
thing, so
blog.
I can't remove it.
Yeah.
All right.
More questions, I guess.
I'll come back to the audience in a second, but I wanted to ask Brian something, to expand on something he said. You said that the industry is moving away from work for hire.
So right now we're working on a new contract with freelance writers that is where what it does is we license their writing for a certain window of time, a certain number, like 3 years exclusive license. We have the right to publish it in English or worldwide, any translation, that sort of thing. After that, they can publish it however they want. They just can't use the layout or art that we did or any editing that we did to it on our side. Because, we're all creatives. We want to make sure that we're not... If somebody wants to use their writing in something else, do it.
So basically, you pull the flesh off and have the bones back, right? Okay,
exactly.
okay.
We're actually doing the same thing for
Awesome.
Koala. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
We were very cognizant that our company is based in the global north, and most of our creatives are based in the global south. And we didn't want to take their IP. So yeah, we're just licensing it for I think 3 years.
That's very cool. Cobalt's actually moved to hiring some of our writers on an actual hourly base, which is new. Like obviously we have our lead writer and our lead designers and editors that are full-time staff, but of our freelancers, we've taken a few of them recently and moved them from, cents per word pay to actually saying, you know what, you write enough for us, we'd rather pay you like an hourly rate, and you just write, 12 hours a week for us, or 15 hours a week for us. And that tends to be a lot more sustainable for them, because then it's not based on word count. And it's a lot more sustainable for us because I can expect that X, Y, and Z freelancer is going to turn in 12 hours of work for the week. And so we're trying to open up some options as well for people to have some new ways, writers to have new ways of making money.
And clarification, in case anybody doesn't know, the word count is edited and published, not what you turn in. Correct?
It depends.
And that depends on the company.
It depends on the
That
company.
I've
Please read your
done both ways.
contract.
Yes, that is, you're right. That
Goes back to the contract.
Yep, that goes back to the contract. Jenny's right.
I
I've seen
pay
it both
for
ways.
whichever is the highest number.
Yeah,
I can
you want
do-
to negotiate for
If you
whichever is going
turn
to be
in
the
a
higher
giant
number.
pile of garbage words just to make more words.
Well, that's a rejected draft. That's a
So I was gonna say,
separate.
that comes back for, yeah, that
Yeah.
goes back.
Like, if it's a our contracts have stuff about, like, we've rejected this whole thing. This is not usable. Start over. And that's a different clause. But
Yes, so what we do is just that. It comes in a draft. We pay based on what you turn in, not what we edit down to, right? So you don't want your contract to be like, oh, we need you to write 1,200 words, and then they edit down to 10,000, and you only get paid for the 10,000. Because 2,000 of those words ain't gonna print. 1,000, sorry. Those companies will do that to assure that they pay you less.
it
that
also
is-
means that
yeah.
you're not getting paid till after the editorial process.
Correct, and that could be
Which can take
2
a while.
years, right?
Yeah.
I just told you that could take 2 years, so you don't want to put out like 1,200, 1,000 words or whatever, and then turn around and not get paid for 2 years. That's a freelancer's nightmare. Cash flow, it's a nightmare.
I see that you have a question. I am going to go back to the audience, but I'm going to take questions from a couple other people, and then I'll come back.
There were some other questions.
Yeah, there were some.
Yeah,
Get those hands back up if you got a question.
Fox, head person.
Yes.
Newsy Fox.
Foxy, that's me. Right, okay, so my question that I had earlier, you guys were talking about 5 years worth of like marketing for a project after you like crank it out. So like,
That's not marketing really. It's continuing to build on
Yeah.
that brand for 5 years.
Releasing supplements,
you
putting
can
adventures in
add
the
on to it.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so that it becomes an organic marketing at that point because you're constantly putting out new product that builds on it. But
DLC.
right,
Loot
when
boxes.
I think about Cobalt Press, I can't let our library go to the wayside, right? So even though we've got Tales of the Valiant out right now, we've got 10 years of 5th edition product I still can't just pretend doesn't exist. Like I have to still give attention to. Now that's on a big scale. I imagine that your personal publications maybe not quite as many, but there are ways to do that. Drive-Thru has great options where they'll do bundles, right? Ways to what we call the resurfacing of old product, where they'll bundle you with other people that are similar, or other products that are similar. You bundle it for the audience for minimal, but you get money again for the first time in 2 years or whatever. Are we passing on dice? Oh, I got those. I already got some. They're in my hand.
Take another one, okay.
They're delicious.
So
eat them.
Yeah, don't eat them. That's all different. So yeah, there's a few ways of doing that. But if you are actually designing a core system, you never want to leave that. Could you imagine if Monty Cook was like, Cypher's great, but I wrote that 10 years ago. I'm not putting any more marketing dollars behind it anymore. Right? And you're like, well, but that's your core system, everything you write after. So you have to find a balance as you grow your library and your actual collection of publishings to say, where is the balance? What is most important? If we think about it as a pyramid, what is the base? Because none of this stands up without what's here on the bottom.
What's your player's handbook, your
Right, your monster manual, like what are these
Yeah.
things that become the huge, and then everything else builds on top of that, right, for your library. Now, if you're not designing your own new core game, maybe it's just a setting. Your world is the thing that becomes that foundational level of your pyramid, and then you build up from there. And the thing at the top is always going to be shifting. It's the newest thing, and it shifts down. Then the new thing comes and it shifts, but your foundation never moves. It's got to be there in your larger planning for how you're talking about the products and the publishing that you're doing.
Very cool. Another question? I see you. Hold on. I'm going to go back here because I saw you earlier, and I'll come back to this area.
All right, so this is more of like a kind of a marketing question, and I understand. And I'll preface this that what consumers want and what companies want are going to be two different things.
Yep.
But this is more of a selling your product to a publisher. Like, let's say you're not necessarily a freelancer, but you've made your system, and I'm not going to say you're selling out, but you're selling that product.
You want to provide your IP to their library.
To their library, so you could potentially get that more spread out and published out. Do publishers care? How much do they care about crunch? Like the crunchiness of a system?
I think
Depends
it
on the
depends on the
publisher.
publisher. Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah, that's a publisher type thing, right? If what you write is great and wonderful and it's crunchy as hell, awesome, because it's great, wonderful, and crunchy. And there are going to be people, there are audience, that there are gamers out there that want great, wonderful, and crunchy. And there are going to be publishers, right? Specific groups that really lean towards that. I think about like some independent publishers you can look into, like Lazy Wolf Studios. That's Lou Anders, amazing writer, incredible, right? You've got Necromancer Games. Mage Hand started as a small group, right? Now they're Mage Hand Press. They had to start somewhere, and they oftentimes will buy other people's stuff and bring it into their larger library, or at least help them through publication, right? But I don't actually know that crunch matters as long as you are selling crunch to the right publisher.
Who's publishing your thing?
I am.
Self-publishing is a thing. It's expensive and it's hard.
I mean, like, I guess it's I made a company.
Yeah, I was about to say, you did it. You did it.
Yeah.
You did it. It was a
Do you
paperwork.
mean who's printing my thing?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know, some company in China.
There's lots of them.
Yeah, there is. We haven't signed a contract on printing yet because we didn't have the books yet.
But also, man, printing and figuring out your manufacturing stuff is very, very hard. There's some really awesome things like print on demand now. That is
Printing
huge.
a nightmare.
Right? It's a different process, but like not having to hold a stock of 400 books because that's the smallest crate you can get or freight you can get at your house is a different thing. You don't have a warehouse, you're just an individual, so what's right for you? And then you're like, well, I could hold 100 in my basement, okay? You gotta go find a manufacturer that'll only manufacture 100. Right?
Yeah.
That there's a bigger thing when you start, right? When you start to get out there. And I'm sure you've seen all of this as a small publisher.
I think, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
And even with that, you can, like, I personally have gone from having to rent a storage space to having to get a warehouse to then having to go back to a storage space to getting a giant shed in my backyard and everything in between, because depending on what you do, whether like it's just books like that have to be in climate controlled environment to other products that supplement things that don't, trying to figure out what's right with your business model and being able to like let it grow and fluctuate over the years, especially if you start getting into conventions and trying to sell more of your product to people.
The operations side of publishing is
Right.
fantastic.
It's huge.
Oh yeah,
There's
love
so much
it.
business.
There are companies out there that are willing to partner with smaller creators who are just getting into the space. My brain clicked to realize what you were trying to get to. So
Yeah, Sean was
listen,
gonna get there
it says
eventually.
exhausted for a reason.
Oh, I need that shirt.
So a number of other companies will basically, like, they have this infrastructure in place. They have their warehousing, they have their connections to distributors, and for a significantly lower cost than getting your own warehouse, you can take up a small corner of their place and use some of their distribution and fulfillment services. And I found the easiest way to connect with those companies is to be a part of the community, get to know those people. Because
Stand in front of the booth and offer the thing.
yeah, that's what I did.
I mean, Google
Stare
Press
at
and
them
Paizo
from
shared a
across the
warehouse for years. We have only really just got, like, within the last 3 years, we kind of moved away from Paizo, and now we've made a big announcement. We have finally decided to get a warehouse in, like, the middle states, right, in the middle of the United States, so that shipping is easier and some other things for us. But, like, we were just wee babies, and Paizo was kind of a wee baby, and the two wee babies came together and got a warehouse to make it work, right? We were
Yeah.
talking about, like, sharing space. Like, that's how we did it. So something to think about. But yeah, anytime that you're talking about like getting to the physical book or the actual manufacturing, you really have to think about what you can take on. And is it actually just easier to make it available as print on demand on drive-through? Even though there might be more work before it goes to print to make that a reality, the cost in the long run of not having to hold your books is kind of huge.
I'll say something, I'm not sure if it correlates to this question, but could, we obviously don't create the books, but something I've noticed, we've released one thing on DM's Guild, but and it's one of the things that, and this is why I bring it up, is as a consumer, and this shouldn't be the case, but it is, spend the money on art that draws in an audience, because if you have something that isn't eye-grabbing or a cool logo or something like that, spend the money in the forefront, because that's at a convention, that's the first thing, something shiny, something cool, it's going to draw their eye, and they're going to get to talk to you and learn about your system. If you have a very plain-looking, generic book, a lot of times people look at it like, oh, that's cool, and keep walking. It shouldn't be that way. Your writing and your content should be what matters, but in order to have that conversation, you have to have the eye candy.
I think it's also important to know, just if we're talking about design, who you think your audience is going to be, right? If you write crunchy stuff, more than likely you're looking at a Pathfinder audience, right? Or you're looking at people that may play games that we don't consider new or modern. They're probably going to have heavier mechanics, these kinds of things. Books like that have a very distinctive design. You can look at a 2E book and you know it's 2E because of the kind of art style, because of the layout, because of the spine design, okay? Now we look at some of our more modern books. Let's look at Free League. I can point out a Free League book from across a convention hall. It looks different than any other tabletop book out there. Why? Because they have a clear design. So if I'm designing for Free League, I want it to look like that. So I have to know that like maybe the crunchy number audience is probably going to seek out things they recognize visually, the same thing. If somebody's looking for a new, hip, modern game, they're going to be looking for a sleeker external design. So you're right, it has to catch their eye, but you have to think about who your audience is. You're not designing for you.
Yeah.
You're not designing this for you. This is the number one conversation we have to have with both writers and artists. This is not for you as the designer.
If you're self-publishing, it kind of is.
Well, I guess it kind of
If you're
is.
self-happy,
If you're doing it to make yourself happy, but if you're really wanting
It's
to
not
make
only for you.
it's not only for you. You're really wanting to think about your audience. And when we talk about marketing, the very first thing I do with every book that comes out for Kobold Press, I do it for everyone. I sit my marketing team down and I go, we're going to define who the audience that's going to buy this book is. What do they look like? What is their day-to-day activity? Because I need to know in their day-to-day timeline, where do they have time to buy a Kobold Press book?
Around lunchtime.
Around lunchtime, right? And I have to know, well, if they're very busy people, or if I'm saying this book is really great for moms for whatever reason, I have to say, okay, well, moms go from 6 a.m. most of the time until 9 p.m. every night. They don't have the time to sit down to like read my giant description of why this book is perfect for them. So I have to really think about how do I reach the moms, if that's what my thing is. If this is a book that's designed for DMs, the way I talk to DMs is different than the way that I talk to players in marketing. I define it down to like what I think that person looks like sometimes. What would they wear? Are they wearing a Kobold Press t-shirt? These things help us see our audience and then make better design choices when we start doing things like designing the external piece of our book that's going to be sold to someone.
And to circle back, how do you market yourself to these companies? It goes all back to the convention. Like, put yourself out there. Go to these conventions. Put a pitch packet together. Usually no more than a page.
One page. If you
is
hand
all
me
you
anything
want.
more than one page, I get.
Yep.
So I get
That has all of the key points of what it is that you are pitching, whether it is a story, a system, no matter what it is, and go to the booths, find out what email address do I need to send this to? And you don't even have to say, it's like, hey, I have something, who's your director of marketing, who's your editor, whatever, and just talk to these people, talk to these companies, find out who you need to email it to, and then just get the product out there.
Also, learn the elevator pitch. Like 3 sentences. It has to be under a minute.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, yeah. If you can't pitch your idea and hook somebody in that time, learn how to do it.
Oh, God.
Because it's like the same when someone sits down and is like, let me tell you about my character. And you're like, okay, this is going to be a long conversation. And it's the same idea. It can come, let me tell you about my game. How long is this conversation going to be? If you can do it in 30 seconds and it's a hook, now you have a conversation that can go back
That's right.
to
Because
later.
I don't have time to listen to your 4-minute pitch on the con floor. While I'm standing at my booth trying to sell my product. I have 30 seconds to give you for you to tell me if it's right for us, and I will. On the spot, I'll be like, this sounds really cool. It's actually not right for Kobold Press, but I would suggest you go see Mage Hand. I would suggest you go drop by the Renegade game booth. Like, I do that all the time.
And that goes back to it's a small industry.
Yep.
We know everybody, so
I'm
no
happy
matter
to
who you talk
introduce
to.
you. I've done it before.
Oh wait, your dice.
Yeah, grab your
We
dice if you
have, we
want.
have dice for you.
The most important thing
You want me to
is
throw them?
that the most important thing is that you get yourself down to 30 seconds. And it's okay if you're not great at talking about yourself. We can get better about talking about ourselves because maybe you're not passionate about you, but you're sure enough passionate about the world you created or the game you've created. That's enough.
Alright.
All right. No, I said.
Any more
We have, like,
questions?
We got to tell them who
6,
we
7
are
minutes.
again.
Yeah, we.
Fair. One more question.
Is it two?
And then they have to give
Oh my God.
With you guys on the way out.
Yeah.
You're the guy.
I
You're the
was
last one.
curious, how does not only publishing, but being a publisher change over time, especially considering, how people relate to the internet and to get information, or the digital distribution might have changed a lot.
I'm letting you take this one first. You first.
Sure, it's changed drastically just from, I started printing when all you had was traditional offset printing, and you couldn't do digital printing and have lower numbers and have cheaper print runs. But from the ability, just crowdfunding in itself has allowed so many more people to publish. I will say, if you go the crowdfunding route, put out something small first. Prove yourself, build an audience of people that will then come back and buy the bigger thing. Don't jump in with a project that needs like $20,000 to fund. Jump in with something that needs $300 to $500, and that's it.
Yeah, or
Start
like
to build-
$1,000,
right,
yeah.
build your audience that way. But there's so many avenues now to gain people to follow what you're publishing. It's just changed so much that it's hard to quantify like all the different things. that have
I'll tell you, Wolfgang Bauer always goes, you know how far we've come? I used to watch artists oil paint covers for books.
Yeah, this was
D&D covers used to be hand-painted oil paintings that were then turned into a format in which got printed on the front cover. That's how far we've come. Like, when we talk about where tabletop printing was to where it is now, it's like a whole new age. Like, we just
I had
come
to
through.
remember not to lick the brushes too.
Yeah, because
Sometimes
let it. Like we've just come so very, very far from that point.
If you want to get more into the nuances of that, I at least will be hanging out outside for a bit, and I'm happy to chat about it. But one more question. Go ahead, please.
Yeah.
I've heard this a lot of times about the art. One thing I can write, I think, but art, I'm a little bit above the stick figure.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Finding an artist and collaborating with an artist, how would you go about that process?
First thing that I do is ask. Sorry, I'm the moderator.
No, you do it. You put that.
First
answer
thing
out
that
there.
I do is ask what the demographic that would be best for this art is. Right, again, we're doing a South American book. We want South American artists. So I start there, and then I get into like the Twitter and Instagram communities and figure out who's doing the art and is it an art style that I think will work well. At this point, I also usually wrangle one of my friends into being an art director and then make them go do all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all the wrangling.
Because I'm
Also,
with you, I'm
don't
like,
put I need to commission a logo on Twitter unless you want to do every single one.
Yeah. I would say, yes, scour the interwebs for like artists that need opportunity, but the tabletop industry is huge. Most tabletop artists are actually scouted from other books they put stuff in.
If anyone's looking for an illustrator, I have a couple of recommendations for friends who are out of work right now.
Hey,
Yeah.
right there. But yeah, so it's the same thing. Like, go hit up the book. You're like, I loved this piece of art, and it will have who the artist is. And you might be able to reach out and figure out what their rates are. And even if they're above, that's something like what you could afford. Now I bank them for the project that I'm super excited about, right? Or that thing I'm working toward in 2 or 3 years.
If you're at a convention, Artist Alley, go walk the
100%,
tables, you're like, I love this style. Do you think you would ever illustrate for a book? Have a conversation with the artist. 99.9% of the times, the artist is the one sitting behind that table and trying to sell their art and drawing as they're sitting there.
Make sure you ask them about a commercial license. You're intending to sell your product.
Yeah, because
right.
that's different.
Also that.
Yeah, so then, when you get into using other people's art, you definitely want to have a contract with it. Something that says who owns what and those kind of
Goes
things.
back to the work for hire
Yep.
contracts and all
Yep.
that.
or licensing agreements, yeah.
All right, that's a good question.
That was a great question. Great
Hey, we
question.
still have like 4 minutes. All right.
Oh, doing great.
In the back.
Yeah.
When we're talking about intellectual property rights and such, and all the different lawyers, when it comes to the imaging versus the stylization of the book versus the actual market, do we need to patent that also, or
You
do
can
we does
trademark
that fall under
your
the
property.
intellectual property rights and copyright review during that period in time?
Yeah, so
So-
yeah, Jenny, say
you
that into
can-
the microphone.
You can copyright your trade dress, so that's like the style of how your book looks. So like every 5th edition D&D book, it's got that distinctive look. No one else can use that.
Correct. That's why, like Tales of the Valiant, you can't go out and put the Tales of the Valiant logo on your thing, even though it might be compatible. Because what it's actually compatible with is the Core Fantasy Roleplay system. Tales of the Valiant has been trademarked as trade dress for our IP. You can't use that unless you pay for it. So you can, your trade dress, so how something looks can be trademarked. Words can be copyrighted, right? Your original,
Don't get overzealous though with your
Yeah.
copywriting random words.
I would say, the basics are usually fine. If you have a very distinctive logo, you want to trademark it. If you have a very, if you're creating an original world, you're going to want to make sure that there is a basic copyright in place so somebody can't steal that from you. As a good place to start. When you start getting into the world like where Cobalt is, now we're talking like a whole lot of different licenses and a lot of different steps that we have to take to trademark and to do all those kinds of things. Because we have to protect the company.
Can I ask a clarifying question of you, sir?
Yes.
When you're talking about adaptation of image, do you mean like when we get an art commission in and then we might need to adjust it for publication? Or are you talking about trade dress?
I'm talking from the original art with the sketchings and the original oils and such, and then transferring that over to commercial use.
Okay, so like
okay.
If there is a transition, and then the same thing for
it's a
the
matter
writer
of
within
it's a
transition
matter of the
also?
licensing contract you have with the artist.
Okay.
Most of them will include the publisher's right to make an adaptation within reason.
Digitally removing the author's signature though is generally
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah,
not
very-
a thing that you should do.
Yeah, so like what we do for Cobalt is like obviously the iconic image, the Man of War with the black flag, right? It's become very popular, we've used it. We paid them for that work, right? We paid the artist for that work, and we signed a special agreement that basically said, we, Cobalt Press, are allowed to use this artwork as we see fit, right? The artist is giving us permission to do so. That artist doesn't lose rights to that art, it's still his artwork, he's still the original creator, and he's allowed to put it in his portfolio, right? The original painting, let's say it was like an oil painting, he's allowed to sell that one oil painting, but he's not allowed to recreate it and do 30 or 40 of these limited edition oil painted covers. He can sell the one original and he maintains the rights to it, and then when our contract is up with him, when the copyright is done in 70 years after Wolfgang dies, then that's how it works, then say that artist would then be able to reproduce it and recreate it again. But a lot of artists love seeing their art in the book and are okay with it. Even we have no problem, even if when the preview dropped for Tales of the Valiant, all the artists were like, look at the artwork I did that is in this book. We had no problem with our artists going to social media and sharing the art they created. What they can't do is
We want them to.
well, in fact, we want them to. What they can't do is they can't go to their TeePublic site and put that art on a t-shirt. Because that is for us to put on a t-shirt. That is what the deal was and what we bought the rights to, is for us to print that until we're done with it.
But with certain licenses, especially with smaller publishers and working with artists to get lower rates, you can have certain things in their contract where they can print it on playmats, they can print it on certain things, so they can make money at conventions that is long run making more money than you may pay them to be in your book.
And it still gets your IP out there.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of ways that you can negotiate those contracts. You know, I've even worked with artists where like they have the right to do whatever they want with it, aside from like put it into any other publication, and I can only use their artwork for digital publication.
Oh.
If I wanted to do a print product on it later, I'd have to do another contract with them and pay them more money because that's what they deserve at that point.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, go ahead and tell them where they can find you and who you are one more time. We'll wrap up. Like I said, I'm going to hang out a little bit outside. I won't speak for any of these people. And if anybody wants a card to talk further about things, some of us have those.
There's also dice. Jenny's got dice?
I've got dice.
Jenny's got dice. She'll be out there.
Cool. We're starting down here. Hi, friends. I am Dot. You can find me online as Little Red Dot. By day, I'm the marketing director for Cobalt Press. By night, I am a freelance designer and tabletop producer for Twitch and podcasting.
I'm Devin Henderson. You can see me on Twitter as Devin is not here. The name is kind of explains how often I'm on there.
Devin's not there, but you can leave a message.
Dustin and I own Elders Eye Entertainment. We run D4 D&D, which is a
actual play. Yeah, so I'm Dustin Fletcher, the other half of Elder Eye Entertainment. I'm D4 Dustin F on all social media, but also we actually have in June releasing a cinematic horror actual play, is how we're describing it, of a indie self-published TTRPG system
called The Midnight World,
which is phenomenal. And so there goes that showcase from publisher to marketing to making it to somewhere else. Yeah, we did a full, huge production on it and a miniseries, and we're excited for that. So that's coming out in June. And you can find Elder Eye at Elder Eye ENT on all socials.
I'm Jenny Loveday. You can find me on the internet at Ginny Loveday, Ginny. I am lead editor for Steamforged Games. You can pick up the first thing that I worked on them with. Why are you throwing the things I gave you across the room? That finally just got released. It was a design credit. That's Faraway Sea for Animal Adventures. If you like cute things, that's for you. If you don't, you can buy it anyways. It's great for other people.
I was about to say, yeah, tell your
And I am working on a Kickstarter with Escape Plan Games right now. It's a freelance project. It's about pirates, and that's going to release. I've forgotten. It's later this year. Anyways, there you go.
I'm Brian Pullen. I'm the VP of RPG Development at Infinite Black. I also have my side company, Creature Curation, where I make all sorts of other cute RPG-related stuff. And you can find me on Twitter at @TheBrianPullen.
Very cool. My name is Sean Banerjee, SHAWN-BANERJE. Obviously, you all just got that. I'm available at Sean Banerjee most places, and the Word Refinery is out there doing the work that we do. Thank you all for coming. I hope this was in some way helpful to your interests, and if not, you made some choices.
And don't forget, you can tell Momo if you enjoyed it, or like if you want more of this kind of thing, like go to Momo, leave a comment, tell them how we did, and be like, hey, I like a publishing 201, so we dive deeper. Or I want one that's just on Kickstarter. It helps us a lot as we shape the content coming into next year's stuff. Tell them about it, Jenny.
If you let them know you like the TTRPG panels, they'll give me more budget to get more guests. Please tell them you love us.
Okay, there you go. So yeah, tell them what you love, tell them what you hate, and I don't know, I guess we'll be back next year, yeah.